So, you went to Haiti
I did.
recently. Now, where exactly? Because I'm not that familiar with the geography and terrain of Haiti. So, where in Haiti did you go?
So we were in Tirviere, which is a very small village in the very south west corner of Haiti.
Okay.
So there's a peninsula. So Port-au-Prince is sort of in the middle on the coast, and if you follow the coast down to the very corner of Haiti, that's where we were at.
Okay. Okay. So, how long were you there?
We were there for 7 days
7 days.
in Tirviere.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we had a couple days of travel.
Okay.
It's quite the operation getting there. So
Right. Right. Okay. So, tell me who we is. Like, did you go with an organization or a group of friends, or what? How did that?
we went with Mission Haiti, which is
Okay.
an organization based out of South Dakota.
Oh.
And
Okay.
so there were 11 of us. I think 7 of us were from South Dakota, and then we had 5 from Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell me about your first impressions. Like, you've never been to Haiti before. You've been out of the country before, but you've never been to Haiti before, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you first think when you got there, and then as kind of the week went on, what were a lot of your initial impressions and feelings and observations about this entirely new world that you found yourself in?
Well, my first impression was before we even landed, as we started to come into Port-au-Prince and the homes came into view, I was just completely floored by the devastation that was still in Port-au-Prince from the earthquake and the housing conditions. You could even see from way up in the sky that these people were living in less than even shacks. Some of them were in tents that had fallen apart and were being basically, duct taped back together with tarps. And so that was my first impression when I was landing. And I think I said in the airplane, "Oh my goodness, these people are living in dirt." And so that was really shocking to me. And Port-au-Prince was actually the worst conditions. As we started to drive out into the mountains away from where the earthquake had happened, things improved quite a bit. But Port-au-Prince was very devastated, very crowded, and we didn't stay in Port-au-Prince, so I never really got to talk to those people. But there was just a lot of people it was very crowded, and there's people everywhere, and there's a lot of people with just a really empty, sort of hopeless look in their eye. So that was my first impression as I got to Haiti.
Yeah.
You run through a lot of emotions when you go through that, because immediately you start to relate back what you have to what they have, and you immediately try to translate their situation to yours.
Sure.
And so I immediately started kind of thinking, like, about all the things I've complained about not having, or situations where I've been financially oppressed in my own little view, and what I saw there just totally threw that into the face of my complaining, and I felt guilty for complaining. I also felt a lot of I'm a guy, so I'm a fixer, and so I was like, well, this should be fixed. These people shouldn't be living this way when we live in such luxury in the United States. And so that was a lot of what was going through my head, is like, how could we be a year and a half from this earthquake and still have these people living 5 feet from each other, 3 feet from each other in these shacks. So I'd say the human condition of Haiti was probably really striking to me. Less than, and at that point we hadn't gone through their culture and their faith. All I saw was their physical state.
Right. Yeah. Their lifestyle and their conditions. Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to forget, I think, that we are. I mean, if you make, I don't remember the exact statistics, but basically, if you make more than $20-30 a day, you're in the 90th percentile for income in the world. So we forget that people literally do live in the dirt, and that's just life. That's just normal. They don't know anything different, and then we go there and as if we have the answers, and sometimes I think maybe our answers are just bent on improving their quality of life rather than so.
And that was something that because I knew the stats coming in, I knew that the average Haitian made, I think the stat is $672 a year, which the average U.S. family burns through in a week or less.
Right,
and
less
so,
than a week.
So it was sort of it wasn't even the same
Mm-hmm.
in the same ballpark as far as
Mm-hmm.
income goes. And so
Mm-hmm.
it did take me a little while when I arrived in Haiti to get past that, because we were not there, and I don't think we should go places as Christians to fix their economic situation, because that's really not the point. It's their spiritual situation, but it's really hard not to see that when you're just when it's shoved in your face for the first time in your life.
Right, right. And I mean, it is very Christian to be concerned about those things too. You know, I mean, Jesus wasn't indifferent to people's physical,
Yep.
physical needs, but certainly didn't treat it as a priority. And so, but as Americans, I think maybe one of the ways we try to cope with our guilt for having so much and them having so little is try to improve their quality of life before we get to the real heart of the issue and their real issues, not to mention our real issues. So
yeah, and I think for us it was important to address and to deal with their economic situation, especially when it's to the point where it's a humanitarian crisis where they're not able to feed themselves or house themselves.
yeah.
Or another thing that was a big problem in Haiti was water. The cholera epidemic is really based on the fact they don't have a clean sanitary drinking water system there. And so I think if you're going to spread the gospel there, you have to address and help with some of their physical needs, and we did that. That was a big part of our trip, was to help them with that while sharing the gospel with them.
Sure.
Just like Jesus did, he cared for their physical needs and their spiritual needs.
Right.
For me, it was actually a challenge to make their spiritual needs the most important when I saw these physical needs being there as well.
Right, they can be immediately met.
Yes.
And yeah.
And it was actually as a person, it's easy to just focus on their physical needs because that was obvious. Their spiritual needs were harder to diagnose or understand because I had a cultural barrier. I don't know Creole very well, and so I knew, 10 words of Creole, and I had to talk through translators, so that was a challenge.